Exterior lighting in Renderworks is actually very simple to do. Once you have your model and the cameras ready, all you need to do is add a sun for the sunlight and then apply a Renderworks style. Renderworks style is actually a pre-made one-step combination of settings that supply reflective light from the sky and a background image of the sky and a number of other lighting and rendering quality settings, all of them rolled up into a single command. Now, exterior lighting in Renderworks typically has two sources. One is light from the sun, as I mentioned, and we can place this light in the scene using the Heliodon tool, which we'll discuss in a minute. And the other source of light comes from the sky. In Renderworks, light from the sky is placed in a scene using a special kind of light-emitting layer background. And this kind of sky light is included in all the realistic Renderworks styles. So once you select one of these styles, the lighting from the sky is automatically included in the lighting setup for the file without needing any further adjustments in most cases. Now let's take a look at how each of these light sources are actually placed in a file. First, we'll put in a sun. But before moving ahead, let's make sure the file is open and in top plan view. And now go to the visualization toolset, click on the Heliodon tool, and then double-click anywhere in the drawing to place a Heliodon object which actually represents the sun. Now, it doesn't really matter where the Heliodon object is placed, but generally it's better to put it near the center of the drawing. And now let's make some adjustments. Make sure the Heliodon object is still selected and go to the Object Info palette, and notice that you can adjust a number of settings directly within the palette. For example, you can click on the month drop-down box and then select September. And now click in the time data field and enter 3 p.m. And in both cases, notice that right away you can see changes taking place in the Heliodon icon over here. By the way, we can make changes to the settings in two other locations also. First, in the Object Info palette, click on the Settings button, and the Settings dialog box then lets you adjust a number of different settings, as you can see here. You can choose your project's region and city, or you can manually enter the coordinates of a city that you designate if it doesn't appear in the list, and then click OK to finish. You can also control certain settings in the Solar Animation dialog box. So double-click on the Heliodon icon, or actually you can edit the Heliodon object via the visualization palette like this. And now you can see the controls, and many of these controls are actually intended for the solar animation function, which is actually outside the scope of this Getting Started intro guide. But still, you can see how you can easily make many adjustments to the sun using these interactive controls. And just make sure that the Heliodon setting is selected at the top of the dialog box first before making any changes. Now, sometimes it's better to change the settings in the solar animation dialog box while you are in a rendered view, because then you can see the results right away, and especially when you're rendering in OpenGL, because OpenGL renders so quickly. So to see this, let's switch to a perspective view. And now let's render. And now we can go to the visualization palette and first select the Heliodon object and then edit it. And as we make the changes in the settings, right away you can see the results in the rendering. By the way, notice the light object icon where you place the Heliodon. It's there because of a Vectorworks preferences setting, and you can make this icon disappear from view. So up in the menu bar, go to Vectorworks Preferences, and in the Vectorworks Preferences dialog box, click on the Display tab at the top, and then click on the Display Light Objects drop-down box on the right, and then select Only in Wireframe. And this way you can see the light objects, not just the sun, but all light objects, when you are in wireframe view, but not in the final renderings. And now let's complete the exterior lighting for the model. So we'll select a Renderworks style, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a pre-made combo of Renderworks settings that provide a number of different things. And And for this exercise, we'll use the View menu. So now go to the Renderworks Style and select Realistic Exterior Final. Even though we have not yet applied textures to the walls, windows, and objects, right away you can see that the rendering has much better quality than we had before. And you can see the colors, you can see sky background, and the light bouncing between surfaces. Everything is better. For a quicker rendering, although a somewhat lower quality one, select Realistic Exterior Fast. And the increased rendering speed of Realistic Exterior Fast will make it easier to use when you're working on a model, simply because of the speed of the rendering, you can see the changes right away. For working on the model, it's best to use OpenGL many times because you can see the changes so quickly, but you can also use Realistic Exterior Fast to get a sense of what the final rendering would look like. And then after you finish working on the model, and you really want to see the quality of the final rendering, just go to Realistic Exterior Final, and that'll give you a much better idea. Now, as I mentioned earlier, all of the Renderworks settings that make up a Renderworks style can be adjusted manually also. If you go to the resource browser, for example, you'll find the Renderworks styles there under Render Styles. Right-click on one of them and then select Edit to see the different settings that it controls. And even though they're highly automated, all of these tools that I've been discussing are actually very sophisticated also. For example, see what happens when you change the settings for the Heliodon from morning to evening. And now let's go to the Heliodon's Object Info palette. First, let's select the Heliodon and then go to the Object Info palette. And in the settings in the Object Info palette, change the month to August and the time to 6 p.m. And notice how not only of the color of the light has changed, but also the actual appearance of the sky. And by the way, this only happens when the physical sky and physical sun checkboxes are selected in the Heliodon's Object Info palette. If they are not selected, then you won't see these differences, these changes in color. All of these settings are described in detail in other support materials provided by Nemetschek, both in the help resources and in detailed training manuals. But the main thing to keep in mind is that most exterior renderings may not really require many adjustments. In most cases, all you need to do is place a Heliodon object in the scene and then select a Renderworks style, and you'll get a good quality exterior rendering. One of the things that can really enhance the appearance of a rendered scene is the application of textures to walls and to objects, and that is the topic of our next task.